Hope you had an opportunity to make your AJAX request. Next step is to make this more dynamic. So we want to pick up the value of this input and pass it along into our AJAX request. So let's create a brand new function. And because ultimately we want to have a number of different functions, and all of these functions are going to be doing AJAX calls. So this one is going to be doing just a regular JavaScript function. So it's outputting all of that information into JavaScript, and that's where we're going to actually load this information. Because within the make request, let me clean this up a bit. Within the make request, we need to account and we need to pick up the URL so we can pass it within the function. So it's going to be one of the parameters that we're going to pass through is URL, and we can get rid of that over here because we're going to be passing it into the function. And what we want to do is we actually want to pick up the value of the URL from our input over here. So let's do that. So variable URL and document. We'll use query selector again. So query selector, and selecting that value, we'll do input name equals URL. And then we don't need to do anything else with that object, so we'll just pick up the value there. And next, we're ready to pass it into our function. So we're able to pass in the URL into the function. So let's try that out. So a little minor change, but it's going to make us more dynamic. So this way, we can actually change the different values there. So if I change users to 3, we get user 3. If I change user to 4, so we're getting whatever URL we're inputting here, and we're getting that output into our interface. Another thing that I wanted to add into our project is a really nice output within the web page. So instead of having it show up within the console, it's going to be nice if we can just see the output directly within our web page. So we don't even have to open up our console. So let's create that. And we'll create a div, call it output. And let's make this bigger so we can see the entire content. And I'm going to create another function that's going to actually do the output. And this is going to give me the ability to call this function from my AJAX requests and output some content into there. So that we know that once we break out of this request, the response text is only available within this condition here, and we're not returning it anywhere. So I wanted to make use of it and actually pull it out into the output. So we can do that within this type of format. So do output. And let's pass in some parameters. So some of the parameters that maybe we want to pass in is the response text. So we'll call it response text. We also maybe want to pass in a status. And then lastly, maybe we want to pass in some XHR object information. And then within output, let's we'll put output into a variable. So output, document, and query selector, or we could do get element by ID for this one. Let's do something different. So get element by ID. The ID is output. We don't have to specify the hash because we already know that it is an ID that we're looking for. And then let's output inner HTML and equal that to the response text. And we know that the response text actually is going to be in an object format. So if we try to output that directly into our web page, it's not going to look nice. So we need to stringify it. So let's stringify our response text and see what that looks like. So now we could probably minimize this. We still will need our console for a little bit longer, but there we go. So we see that we're actually not passing that information into output quite yet. So let's update that and do output. So the first parameter we're passing in is the response text. We can also pass in our XHR status, so we get a number there. And then this one, we can do something like success. So we can just pass our own message into it. So refresh, and let's try that out. So there we go. So we're actually outputting that content directly into our web page in a readable format. And we know that this is coming in as a string value, so we don't have to stringify it again. And if it's not coming in within a string format, because some of the libraries that we're going to work with are automatically going to convert this into a JSON object. So this could be problematic. So let's do a little quick fix for that. So open up our editor, and we know that we're getting that content coming in here. So let's check to see if response text, and we're going to do a quick check to see if type of, this should be one word, so type of response text. So if that is equal to a string, then we know that it's a string value, and we don't have to do anything else with it. We can just leave it as a string value. And if it isn't a string, so if it's coming in as an object, then let's do something with it. We're going to parse it in. So we'll do JSON parse. So over here, what's happening here is if it's coming in and if it's a string, then we're going to actually turn it into an object so that our stringify will work in all cases. And if over here it's not a string, then we're just going to keep it as is, and then we're going to stringify it in the output. So that way we have uniform output, and that will get rid of all of those backslashes as well. So there we go. So we can see that that data is being pulled through. We get our information. Let's try a different value. So there we go. So everything is being output properly. And we could also output our status as well. So let's build that out into the application. So we know that we're grabbing this information. So it's going to be relatively easy to simply output that inner HTML and add to it. So let's do that. And we can do that with the, and this one is going to be status. And then also let's do the last one as well. So let's just do an XHR. So even if they're strings, we stringify them, and it looks like they're all going to be strings anyway. So we're going to stringify them anyway. So there's no harm in having it this type of format. Either way, it's going to be returned as JSON. And then also, I just wanted to quickly add, before we go back into our HTML, let's add some styling here. So let's do a span class, and I'll give it a class of heading. And we'll label it response text. So we can actually see what it is, know what it is. And maybe this JSON data will just output as a paragraph. Then we need to close off the HTML and close off the div. And that should be good. Let's do the same thing for the other ones as well. So I'm going to just do a quick copy and paste, and then we'll update it afterwards. So this one isn't response text, it's status. And of course, you can style it however you want. And we'll just call this one response. Because this one we've kind of kept open. We're over here, we're just putting a string value there. So it just gives us a number of different options of how we can do it. We might want to just put JavaScript response, so that we know where it's coming from. Also, let's do some quick styling. I don't want to focus too much time on styling, but it'll just make a nicer experience when that content is being output. So let's add in that styling. So we added in class of headings for those spans. So within here, let's display it as a block. And let's give it a width of 100. Do a quick border. So one pick solid black. And of course, you can customize however you want it to look. I'm going to give it a little bit of color, and let's do the text. We'll do the text white. And we also want to grab those divs that have a paragraph, and let's apply some styling to those paragraphs. And just something quick so it just stands out. So let's check this out, see what it looks like. So go back out, refresh, and so there we go. So we've got our response text, our status, and our response content. We can actually make this a little bit smaller as well, so we can see everything that's coming in. So great. So we're ready to move on to the next lesson. So we've got some information coming in there, and we know that whenever we update it, this will update as well. So we see all of the JSON, we see the status, and we see where we sent it. So JavaScript XHR object was the one that returned this response. So go ahead, try this out for yourself, update your code in order to make it more dynamic, picking up that URL information, and then outputting it within your web page. So coming up next, we're going to spice things up a little bit, and we're going to start bringing in some of the libraries. So we've got jQuery, Ajax, and we're also going to be doing Aquios, as well as we're going to be using Fetch as well. So all of this is coming up.